Well, thank you very much. I remember the first time I came to this weekly business group. I think Jan G. brought me 10 years ago, and it scared the hell out of me, Jan. Turned out that there was a few friends there, and they're mostly friends now, depending on what bill we're talking about at the moment. We try hard not to have those conflicts, but they do happen. And I'm also really happy to see the members of Class 40. My dad was a very, very proud member of Class 1. That was a really, really big deal to him. Not quite as big a deal to all of us, because every month he'd come back with these crazy ideas, and we thought that he was losing his mind. Dad, it's hard to believe it's been 40 years. He's 80 now, and thanks to Ag leadership, his interest and activity level is demonic. And he is still committed to all the things that all of you do. So you're part of, I think, a proud heritage, and I probably should have done it. But I am part of a fifth-generation family business, and I thought that there should be one thing that my dad did that I didn't do. And the funny thing is, now he's down in Olympia all the time, driving everybody crazy. So he's doing what I do. He's the highest maintenance old man I've ever known. Okay, well, we are just past the halfway point of the session right now, and we are in the minority. Now, the House Republican caucus is one of the most experienced minorities in the United States. And, you actually do learn to do things in the minority. I just wish we didn't have that much experience in that. But this place is still pretty evenly divided. There's 147 elected representatives and senators, and there is one kind of exception to the normal partisan rule. Tim Sheldon is a Democrat who caucuses with Mark Schoesler's caucus, but I think right now it's something like, I don't know, if I do the numbers I'll screw it up, but the total numbers are within, I think, 2 or 3 on each side, depending on how you count Tim. And so there are great opportunities for the minority to have an influence on things. Now, it's unlikely that we're going to force anything through, except in a few rare occasions when there's something that requires a supermajority vote. And you saw what happened when the House and Senate, I think, worked together pretty well in the end to produce a good result with Hearst. And that all started when the Senate decided to break a little bit of precedent and make that a major issue in whether or not they were going to do a capital budget. And that took a ton of guts. There was, I'm sure that they and our members too, heard from a lot of people that were angry about that, but there's sometimes when you have to draw a line in the sand. And again, the result I thought was pretty darn good, and it all started when the Senate made that stand, and I think made it very plain what their objectives were. So that's an example of what the minority can do in a positive way. You just don't get very many opportunities like that. And I'm not sure that the voters really want you to do that consistently either. But I think they respect it in this case. So what the minority can do otherwise is when we put together a coordinated case and we have allies on the outside among the voters and the business community and sometimes just as importantly the commissions and trade associations that motivate their members, we can stop stuff. It's not as satisfying as passing things, but sometimes it's a heck of a lot more necessary. And because we've had this odd hiatus in the state of Washington, the other side thinks that Washington is a totally blue state, and the normal state of affairs is whatever the blue guys want, they get. But for 5 years, thanks to Mark Schoesler and the Senate, that didn't happen. Now, they had to bend in some cases, but in general, Democrats didn't get to push through the social issues or the business regulation or the taxes that were at the top of their agenda. And in many cases, we got to push through some things that were good for the economy. And the thing that I think really unites Republicans more than anything else is we're here for the private economy. And I think most of you are kind of part of that. And sometimes the different players in the private economy get a little divided. You have big versus small. You have, Forrest versus somebody. We try not to do that when we can help it. But when the business world stays together, when they're not cutting side deals, this is a strong, strong group. And with your help, we can stop things like excessive regulation. We can stop things like higher and discriminatory taxes. And hopefully, we can stop the social issues that turn into highly expensive and disruptive business practices. And to me, that's when things get the worst, is when we are mixing business and social issues. We're all free to pursue our own ideology and our goals, but I'm not a big believer that government should be out there imposing it on everybody because we happen to have this majority or that majority. Well, during the current session now, we're at day 31. This is theoretically a 60-day session, and in my 8 years, I've experienced one session that ended on time, but I think it's quite possible that this one will end on time. We don't have the traditional budget problem, and by that I mean we have so much money coming in that no one with a straight face can tell you that we've got a shortage of dollars. Now, there are some people that think that we have a shortage of dollars to add a bunch of new programs, but at least they recognize that for the budgets that we passed, thanks to John Braun and Mark Schoesler, who really drove the process in the Senate, we have the dollars that are necessary to implement the things that we've passed up till this point. So mainly what we're now working on, I think, is a slightly muted effort to pass the pent-up demand of the agenda of the people that sit on the other side of the aisle from Mark and I. And I'm not sure where that is going to go. We're also in the early parts of the first House of Origin cutoff, and that's when bills have to pass their House of Origin, the House or the Senate, or they are theoretically dead unless they're necessary to implement the budget. And to me, this is the most fun part of the year. I know that sounds crazy, but I'm the floor leader for the House Republicans, and we kind of play the next 5 or 6 days like it was a football game with 4, maybe 5 quarters. Yesterday and today, we are kind of setting the stage, letting the other side see where we're going to fight, how much time it's going to take to pass the bills that are simple and to pass the bills that are contentious, and they are trying to decide how much pain they want to inflict on their members. Because when you roll out a bill that doesn't make sense, it's our job to make you look that in the face, make the folly of your ways become apparent to the whole world. And oddly, that doesn't really happen during the committee phase because we don't really have a debate in the committee phase. But when you bring it out onto the floor, you expose all the good and the bad things that happens that are part of the bill. And you'd be surprised, that doesn't change any votes on the floor. When that bill comes out on the floor, in almost every single case, the votes are already cooked and counted. But what you do on the floor today has an impact on what they're willing to bring out to the floor tomorrow. And so both in the, and by the way, Mark will probably mention this, they stayed out till 1:30 last night in the Senate, really working over a bill that was simply designed to make it easier to expand union membership and make it harder to give people a free choice in where they sent their dollars. It passed because it was supported by the majority. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that it did.
It's on third reading.
Oh, excellent. Anyway, we're getting the old band together, and Joe Fain was over kind of sharing their strategy, and we're going to go to work on it over in the House as well. And, I don't think that we are reflexively anti-union, but we are in favor of people having a choice as to whether or not they're going to be a member, and also having a choice as to where they're sending their dollars. And so as the Senate makes that bill harder and harder and harder to pass and engages more and more and more of the public, they are setting it up for it to die in the House, potentially. Will that happen? I don't really know, but this is how we work together. And one of the really fun things for me is no one realizes what a game of morale politics is, because you don't see that part. But inside that caucus room, the amount of resolve that these 147 people have has an immense impact by the time you get to the end of the session in what bills are going to come out and what form they are going to come out in. And to me, that is the fascinating human part of this that is mostly invisible to most people. Now, I'm sorry, I'm getting so far into the nitty-gritty here, and I don't want to take any of Mark's time away, but I know that we would both rather have questions, I think, than speeches. So since Mark didn't get introduced, is it okay if I introduce Mark? Oh, go ahead. No, I saw that face. Okay, well, I would like to introduce a colleague, a senior colleague of mine, who I've known for, gosh, I think 20 years since I opened a milk processing plant in Eastern Washington. Mark is one of the longest-serving people in Olympia. He is the longest-serving majority leader who is a Republican for many decades, I think, and the person that held that tiny majority together over 5 years, and I think really began putting Washington back on a path towards the center. Mark is a farmer, so that means that we all like him for that, and I think is going to soon have that majority leader title again.
Well, thank you. I think I'm going to hold some of my remarks. I'm going to be with the Ag Forestry class hopefully for a little bit this afternoon before I have to go to rules. So focus on a few things where we're at now. We're now celebrating, I think, day 33 of Labor Day. It's set to go for another 27 days. And the example last night was the governor cooked a deal with SEIU, we have the paper, to circumvent Quinn v. Harris on freedom of membership in public employee unions. And what I told the newspapers, not a fan of collective bargaining of public employees, coerced membership, but the people we're dealing with are the lowest paid public employees in the state. There's some sympathy there because they may be somebody you know in your community takes care of a family member that would otherwise be in a nursing home, couldn't live by themselves. But they take double the percentage of dues that a high-paid union member does working in Olympia. Now, there's something just not right about that. That somebody making $14 an hour pays double the union dues as somebody making $40. It's just wrong. Backroom deals with the governor, with campaign contributions, don't make sense. We stayed till 1:30 or so this morning using most of the tools at our disposal. The last was we would not give it a bump. There was no press there last night because there is no longer a working press corps in Olympia as I knew it. So with the newspapers in town today, let's give it a little time, shine the light a day, and by not giving the bump means you have to wait till the next working day. So since that was about 12 hours ago, we didn't give the bump, we're going to do it tomorrow. But it's going to give the public a chance to look and see what sort of a backroom deal is coming. The other was another bill last night we also didn't give the bump on that would make it impossible, or I shouldn't say impossible, more difficult to identify Gary Chandler versus G. Chandler, who needs to know whether they have the freedom to join or not join a union. We held off on that. The number of labor bills in general is unprecedented in modern times, mostly because I had the fortune to be Republican majority leader for 5 years. And I think our state's economy continued to grow just fine without it and continue to grow. Excuse me. We're going to get a revenue forecast next week. And Steve Lurch, our economist, came in and said, since the last revenue forecast, we have collected $120 million more than anticipated. Due to the Trump tax cuts, there will be $85 million more just before July 1 when we close the books on this fiscal year. And we expect other growth. I can tell you, John Braun could write this budget in his sleep. He literally could. But that's not good enough for some people. We fully funded McCleary. We're going to pick up some minor flaws in the proposal with some money this year. But you could write this budget in your sleep. It's that easy. But some people aren't satisfied. A energy tax is the most devastating thing that we could do to the state of Washington. Hardworking, middle-class people, small businesses pay the price so that somebody can feel good about unmeasurable improvements in the environment. That simply is not acceptable. We represent those hardworking taxpayers everywhere, the small business that doesn't fit into the right category we need to protect. And we will continue that fight to protect the taxpayers, the job creators, from that energy tax. It is just the right thing to do. And I believe that people are with us in pursuit of that. But that isn't enough. Just in case, they've introduced several major taxes in the House, a counter B&O that's devilish, capital gains income tax in the House, and Senator Ranker, I think, has introduced the mother of all taxes between repeals and increases. Let's go back to the candy dish for a tax. Let's go to the soda pop. Let's tax all synthetic ag chemicals and fertilizers. But oh, by the way, if you're an organic farmer, it's free. Just saw that one this morning when our staff read through it. So in a period when revenue has grown every single quarter for approximately 8 years, and we're going to have hundreds of millions of dollars more next week, they are not satisfied. And that's something we feel very, very strongly about. We also feel very strongly about staying the course. I think the men and women that worked so hard last year on McClary deserve a round of thanks because they had to compromise in every way, shape, and form. I guarantee you they did not want to do everything they did from all four corners. In the end, they got a bill out. Governor approved it. The court approved it. Some people would like to change directions before it's ever had a chance. Imagine the court put us in this because of high levies. So the first year, let's raise levies. We've been down that road, folks. Everybody remember the Dorn decision? Dorn. Anybody remember that? Hey, yeah, I remember. That guy would. He had to help figure out how to pay for it under the late Governor Spellman. We had that problem fixed in the 80s, and we slid the slippery slope, and we ended up with McClary. To retreat on McClary now is simply too soon. So I think those are a few of the key points: the taxes, the ongoing celebration of Labor Day, and continuing the course on education are all critically important. And we have to remember the people are behind us on the energy taxes. I guarantee you the only reason we have a transportation package is because both sides of the aisle sold it and people saw they were going to get a benefit. Gary and I have debated a gas tax for 26 years. But when we did it, people saw they were going to get a transportation package. Imagine 10, 20, 30 cents a gallon and no transportation package. We could never have sold that. These people should never sell it. So thank you.
All right, we're going to freeform it. Hi, I'm Senator Sharon Brown. I represent the Tri-Cities, Richland, Kennewick, and West Richland, although we operate as the Tri-Cities, so we also do a lot of stuff for Pasco. There's not a whole lot that I can say in addition to what Senator Schoesler's already told you, except it's a very, very difficult session for us. I have to say, as a member of the Energy Committee, when we passed out those stink bombs, the energy tax the other day, I actually felt physically sick to my stomach. I thought, you know what, no matter where you stand on the issue of carbon, if you want a bill that's actually going to address that, let's talk about that. Let's have that conversation. But the bill that they put before us and the bill that was passed out of committee included 57 exemptions. And by their own admission, right in the text of the bill, it talked about how the bill will be impacting negatively lower income families. That's not a bill that's going to go and help the state of Washington. And I'm sure Senator Schoesler, and I apologize for being late, we had some votes on the floor, but he's got a few more seasons behind him, so he has a little bit more latitude. So we also had a very difficult vote last night. I think Senators Braun and Senators Fain handled it extremely well. The whole issue with unions. It's just everything is being done in the dark of night. It's just absolutely appalling to me. Let's talk about these issues. As we did with paid family leave, we can get to solutions if we have the ability to sit down and talk about it. We can get there.